Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Special School Committee of the Fall River School Committee, Thursday, June 24th, 2021, to order. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Agia?
Here.
Mr. Costa?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mr. Hetzel?
Here.
Mr. Corey?
Here.
Ms. Larrabee? Here. Mayor Coogan?
Will everyone in attendance please join me for a salute to our flag?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20E, pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. This evening, we have two individuals, one here with us this evening, one submitted items for citizens' input. The first one I will read, but just for the record, there has been a portion that's been determined to not be in accordance with school committee adopted policy BEDH. So I will read it, however, it just the record will reflect it has been changed a bit. First, citizens' input comes from Ms. Sarah Rodricks, 830 Langley Street, Fall River, Massachusetts. The letter is dated June 24th. Dear members of the school committee, on tonight's agenda is a discussion around negotiations regarding the superintendent's resignation. The only responsible option is to terminate the superintendent's contract immediately. The school year is over, and we need to be able to move forward without him in a position to make decisions for our students, families, and staff. The school committee needs to appoint a qualified interim superintendent. We have committed, responsible, and talented individuals here in our district that would serve ethically. The decisions around hiring a new superintendent should not be left to this current school committee. While I don't believe that waiting until next January, when hopefully there is a new school committee in place to hire a superintendent, is appropriate, we need to come up with an alternative plan that involves members of the community in making this incredibly important decision. Let's hope that this meeting provides us with some resolution and an opportunity to move forward. We need a fresh start. Sincerely, Sarah Rodricks. Thank you, Ms. Rodricks. The next individual who has signed up for citizens' input this evening is Mr. Colin Dias, 560 Ray Street, Fall River, Massachusetts. Mr. Dias, welcome. 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Good afternoon. I know the mayor's not here. Mr. Chairman and members of the school committee. I believe since the public, in my opinion, has lost its confidence in much of the school committee, I believe the school committee should choose the new interim superintendent. However, I believe the school committee should hold off until after the election to choose the new permanent superintendent. We have an election a few short months away, and with everything that happened, we should allow the voters, not everyone here, but the voters, to give their trust to whoever is elected or re-elected to the school committee. And in terms of the buyout, when you're dealing with public dollars, I believe the public deserves to see every sentence in any agreement that might be proposed with the superintendent. They also deserve to see every dollar that is being spent on any agreement. And lastly, I will say, some traits I wish to see in the next superintendent is one that cares about people and cares about putting the district's needs before personal interests. Because November, we're going to put the taxpayers to the forefront and everything else will be put aside in the school district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dias. That concludes citizens' input this evening. We do have an item listed for executive session. Attorney Assad, would you please? Is there a reason for executive session? If so, would you please state that for the record?
Would be under Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21A2, to conduct a strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct contract negotiations with non-union personnel, including the superintendent of schools, Matthew H. Malone. We will reconvene. There may or may not be statements at that time.
Thank you, Attorney Assad. Is there a motion for executive session?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
are we just taking them out of order? Is that, we have to have a motion to take them out of order? Because the executive session's 5,
Right.
so 3 is the committee of the whole, so is there a motion
Right.
that's needed to take them out of order? and then
Certainly.
vote?
Mr. Aguirre,
So
would you
moved.
make a motion to just take executive session as listed as 5 out of order?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Mr. Aguirre. Seconded by Mr. Hetzel. Any discussion on that? Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Mr. Agia?
Yes.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Hetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Okay.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Mayor Coogan?
Thank you.
Make a motion.
Now
to
is there a
go to
motion for executive session? Mr. Aguirre made the
Second.
motion for executive session, seconded by Mr. Corey. Any discussion on the motion to enter executive session? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Mr. Agia?
Yes.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Hetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yep.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Mayor Coogan?
Thank you. This committee will stand in recess for executive session. Good evening. I'd like to call back to order after executive session the Fall River School Committee for June 24th, 2021. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Agia?
Here.
Mr. Costa?
Here.
Mr. Hart?
Here.
Mr. Hetzel?
Here.
Mr. Corey?
Here.
Ms. Larrabee?
Here.
Mayor Coogan?
Are there any motions as a result of executive session that need to be made this evening?
Motion to approve the Second Amendment to the Superintendent's Employment Contract.
Second.
There's been a motion made by Mr. Hetzler to approve the Second Amendment to Dr. Malone's employment contract with the Fall River School Department, seconded by Ms. Larrabee. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Aguirre?
Can I please ask the attorney to summarize for the edification of the public what we're voting on?
I didn't hear that last part.
Mr. Aguirre has asked counsel to summarize for the edification of the public the agreement or the Second Amendment.
Okay, sure. The Second Amendment is based on the letter of resignation from Dr. Malone. Dr. Malone has submitted his resignation effective basically the end of October, November 1st. Based on that, the committee has taken certain steps to ensure the efficiency of the school department, and Dr. Malone has also agreed to the terms of the amendment, obviously. The term, again, would take effect as of July 1st, which is next week, and would terminate on October 31st, 2021, which is consistent with the resignation letter. Compensation is as it is pursuant to his contract to November 1st. This is what the situation is. There is a provision in the contract. Dr. Malone has several days, probably in excess of 20, he'll have 25 days as of July 1 in terms of vacation days. Those vacation days would be taken during the month of October, in addition to which there will be a waiver of approximately 9 days, and I believe it'll be approximately 9 days. And those funds that Dr. Malone is waiving will go towards into the payout of the suspension issue that he had back in January with respect to the school department, whereby it was a month's salary taken over the term of his contract, with a provision in there that stated that if, in fact, Dr. Malone were to leave for whatever reason, that money would be paid within a 3-month period. Dr. Malone has agreed that the monies would be basically dollar for dollar for not taking the vacation and personal days, which he is entitled to by law, and he has waived that right for the money for the suspension fine. With respect to his duties and responsibilities would be turned over to an interim superintendent of schools, an acting superintendent of schools, with respect to all of the powers and duties of a superintendent effective on July 1. Dr. Malone has also agreed that up to between now and the July 1 period, that no appointments would be made and no action would be taken by the superintendent without getting the authorization, the written authorization and vote of the school committee. So in effect, that really takes place right now as of today's date. With respect to the issue of duties and responsibilities, those duties and responsibilities would go to the interim superintendent. Now, there may or may not be, no one really knows, it depends on an individual issue, that the authority to sign a document may have to come from the superintendent. If in fact that's the case, the superintendent will sign any document that is required by the school committee to effectuate the running of the school department and the efficiency of the operation. So that basically the duties, responsibilities, and decision-making, most importantly the decision-making, would now be within the interim superintendent for those responsibilities of the superintendent of schools, and also with the Fall River School Committee itself. With respect to sick leave, there will be no use of sick leave, and there is no provision in the contract in any event for payment for unused sick leave. Annual vacations we just talked about in terms of how that would be used. The contract with respect to personal days is lumped in with the vacation days for the time that would be necessary for the payment during the month of October, as well as for the payment on the suspension fine. All other days and so forth are waived. There is an annuity that kicks in as of July 1, which is $4,000, has been waived. That is not going to Dr. Malone. We have requested it be waived, and Dr. Malone has agreed that it be waived. There will also be basically releases that will be executed by Dr. Malone as well as by the committee and the city, basically stating that what has transpired during this period of time in terms of official actions of Dr. Malone, official actions of the school department, there will be a release that will be executed at that time. That is the essence of the agreement. Basically, in very short form, it comports with Dr. Malone's resignation letter. It is a smooth transition of the decision-making and powers of the superintendent to the interim superintendent, and it allows the school committee to continue with the full operation and policy-making of the department.
Thank you, Attorney Saad. Any further discussion? Madam, Mr. Aguirre?
So this, I wrote a prepared statement so I can be sure that my words are going to be taken as I wrote them, and I thought about this long and hard. I will be voting for this amended contract as a result of the executive session, and I ask my colleagues for support in it as well. The past 10 months since the first complaints against the superintendent were filed have been the most frustrating time over my entire tenure as a school committee member. I want to say thank you to all of the individuals who courageously stepped up to file complaints and raise their concerns about the superintendent's inappropriate behaviors. While many others were aware, they did nothing to stop it. It is my opinion that we should have convened termination hearings after accepting the findings of the investigative report. A termination would have cost the district no money. Unfortunately, the majority members voted against that. It is my opinion that the next best option was to utilize Section 9, the termination without cause of the amended contract, when it was clear that the superintendent did not change his behavior after the last amended contract, and we all knew that we had to move on. Unfortunately, the majority of the committee voted against that in open session as well. But before us today is an amended contract that mirrors Section 9, termination without cause, that was previously voted down. So let's call it like it is. This is an early termination of the contract. This vote will cost the district approximately $70,000. While I'm not happy with that amount of money, I do believe that the benefit to the district of not having the superintendent continue to be in charge as of July 1 is greater than the buyout figures. We still will be liable for money in large sums of money in the future for settlements and legal fees as a direct result of the behavior. Thankfully, this horror show is finally over. Our staff will finally get some relief from the inappropriate behavior that they've been experiencing, and it certainly is time to move on. With that, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Mr. Hart?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I too have just a very brief prepared statement. In the past, I've come here and voted to remove the superintendent. Unfortunately, the votes were not there. I was first informed about the complaints back in September of 2020. We hired an outside attorney to investigate these complaints, which put a price tag on the city for $30,000. When the report came back, and I went to Attorney Assad's office to read the report, and after reading the report, I was very sad in what the people who were interviewed said in that report. It was disturbing, and my heart goes out to them. The amended contract that was approved back in, I believe, February of 2021 was passed by this school committee by a vote of 4-2. I voted no because I did feel that it sent a bad message throughout the district that this behavior was okay, and it's not. We are now looking at potential additional bills, whether it's from potential other settlements or attorney costs, and I think that's unfortunate. Having said that, I'm excited to move forward. We need to find a good fit for our district as it pertains to our next superintendent, one who will treat everyone with decency and respect. Thank you, I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Any further discussion? Mr. Hetzler?
Well, I don't have a prepared statement. I was one of the 4 people that voted to keep the superintendent around, and I think that was I made the best decision I could at the time. The superintendent, we talk about behavior or whatever may have occurred. It wasn't perfect, nobody is. Discipline was handed out. That's what this committee does with our employee, and that's what the right of the employer is with their employees, right? Discipline. So we did that. Who knows what the future holds, but I was at least confident that I made the right decision at the time. I think the district has done very well with Dr. Malone at the helm. I haven't heard all the complaints that some people would like you to believe, and I haven't seen the morale tank like some people have you believe. In fact, quite the opposite. So it's unfortunate that the events that transpired. We can't change that. But moving forward, I just want to say I appreciate your time here, Dr. Malone. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Hetzler. Mr. Corey?
Yeah, just for the public's sake, to understand that over the past 5 years, I've witnessed the school department grow progressively in pedagogy, and in programs, and in personnel. And in 5 years, we've had no grievances with teachers. And through the pandemic, we managed to keep all of our employees whole. The reasons why that all happened is because of the strength of this committee, but also the strength of the decision-making and planning of the administration, which I always thought was very top-notch strategically. So I also have not received, my phone was not ringing off the hook with complaints, nor did my school committee page receive viable complaints. Had I received more complaints, it seemed like the complaints were sort of like compartmentalized with a certain few in this community. That being said, it should not, and whatever has transpired over time in this committee, it should not overshadow the work that this school department has achieved in the past 4 years, which in my estimation as a former educator has been phenomenal. And that I yield, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Any further discussion? Ms. Larrabee?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. My first term here has been quite interesting. Everybody knows I got in it because of my passion for working with kids. But I, as well as some of my colleagues, feel I made the right decision when I voted not to fire Superintendent Malone. Like my colleague, Mr. Hetzler, mentioned, not everybody's perfect. And myself, after reading the final report, the investigational report, I didn't feel
the information in that report should result in a firing. That's all I have to say on that. I mean, I love this district. I love the people in the district. I respect everybody on this committee. I want to move forward. I want to be done with this. And I'd like to make a motion to...
There's one on the table.
Oh, there is?
If you want to amend the current motion that's on the
Oh,
table, Ms. Larrabee, you certainly can. If it's not a motion you'd want to request an amendment to, I
No.
certainly would
Okay.
entertain it after we
Okay.
vote on this one.
Okay. But I think that's all I have to say. I just want to move on, focus on the positive, focus on the district, and focus on the kids at this point. And I yield.
Thank you, Ms. Larrabee. Roll call.
Mr. Agia?
Yes.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Okay.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Mayor Coogan?
Motion carries. Ms. Larrabee, did you have a motion?
I do. I'd like to make a motion that we name Maria Ponce, our current...
Hold on a second. Just for the public's edification, if it's in relation to the committee as a whole, just for the record, the agenda does have a discussion and vote to appoint an interim superintendent of schools. Ms. Larrabee.
You could,
Second.
okay. I would like to make a motion to name our current Assistant Superintendent Maria Ponce as our interim superintendent of schools as of July 1st, 2021.
Ms. Larrabee makes a motion to name Assistant Superintendent Maria Ponce as the interim superintendent of the Fall River School Department effective July 1, 2021. Was it seconded? Seconded by Mr. Corey. Any discussion on that motion? Mr. Aguirre.
Yeah, I'd like to not second it, but I agree with the motion. Mrs. Ponce has been a dedicated public employee for the school department. She's well-respected in the department, and I think she'll take us through this transition quite well. So I do look forward to voting for this, and I think she's going to do an excellent job.
Sure. Mr. Corey, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Aguirre, yield?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Aguirre yields. Mr. Corey, floor is yours.
And for the sake of the public to realize what's happening, when Maria Pont was appointed as an assistant superintendent, I remember how enthusiastic this body was in having her become, to ascend into that role. I remember Maria Ponce when she was a school teacher. I remember her when she was the principal at Durfee High School and Cuss Middle School. And to have her step in at this critical time for our community, I think is very admirable. And so I just want to take a moment to wish her, if she accepts this, Godspeed and the best in every way, and my support. Thank you. I yield.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Any further discussion on the
Mr.
motion on the
Costa,
table?
just a
Aguirre?
clarifying question.
Sure.
So this vote here is around the appointment, but how do we get to the level of, even if it's in the interim, short period of time for compensation with this new individual? Is that just something that Attorney Assad does? Does he need guidance from us on putting that on the future agenda, or is that something that's just going to happen naturally?
So if the motion carries and Ms. Ponce accepts, she will fill a role as interim effective July 1. As far as any contract or any amendments to Ms. Ponce's current contract, that would have to be guidance given by this committee to Attorney Assad to negotiate and bring back.
But can we do that now? My point is, can we, as part of this motion, can we actually say, and then to have Attorney Assad enter into a negotiation at the same time now, so that we don't have to wait another month? Because July 1st is only next week. That's my point.
If we could do this, if I could help a little bit.
Well-
We certainly cannot mention in open session what any parameters would be of any type of negotiation. You can certainly authorize me to speak to Ms. Ponce concerning a potential negotiation for this issue. But I wouldn't, not in open session.
Yeah,
Could
no,
not.
I didn't want to say any amounts. All I wanted to say was, put it on the table, so I'd like to make an amendment that we authorize the superintendent to enter into, to begin negotiations on
Second.
compensation.
So Mr. Aguirre amended the motion that was on the table to approve the appointment of Assistant Superintendent Maria Ponce as the interim superintendent of Fall River Public Schools, pending negotiations with Attorney Assad. Did I capture that?
Correct?
It was seconded by Mr. Hart. Any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Agia?
Yes.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Hetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
So the motion carries. At this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to Ms. Ponce to address the committee if she'd like. If not, that's also okay. It's not necessary, Ms. Ponce, but if you'd like, you're more than welcome to. Floor is yours, Ms. Ponce.
Just very briefly, thank you for entrusting the district onto me. I look forward to continuing my service. We have 10,000-plus students, 1,800-plus employees that are looking forward to beginning a new year, and we have an awesome team that's ready to prepare and plan for opening. So I appreciate your vote of confidence, and I look forward to continue my service.
Thank you, Mrs. Ponce. And on behalf of the committee, you heard the comments that were made. You also heard the vote, which I think signifies this committee's confidence in you as an educator, as an individual, to be a good steward in the interim for our district, for our staff, and most importantly, for all of our students. So welcome aboard, and look forward to hearing further about your discussions with Attorney Assad. Any further business before the committee?
Motion to adjourn?
That covers new business, no new business. Mr. Hart made a motion to adjourn, which I'll
Second.
entertain, seconded by Mr. Aguirre. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Agia?
Yes.
Mr. Costa?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Mr. Hetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Corey?
Yes.
Ms. Larrabee?
Yes.
Mayor Coogan?
This committee will, this meeting is adjourned.